Welcome to Hope on Fire, relevant talk radio for young adults. Whether you're 25 or 45, there's bound to be a discussion that you care about. Our mission is to share practical ways to find God in your everyday life. And now today's host, Chris Lang.
After thumbing through hundreds of complicated nutrition articles and magazine ads, catching random food advice from friends and family, and listening to endless infomercials promising a lean, beautiful body, you might be more confused than ever about what you should be eating. So what exactly should you be eating? Believe it or not, healthy eating doesn't have to mean driving down to your local health food store and stocking up on that veggie meat or all that expensive organic produce. It also doesn't mean you're making Brussels sprouts covered in wheat germ for dinner every night. Tasty thought. Hello, my name is Chris Lang, and I'll be your host today on this first of a two-part series entitled, Is Your Diet Killing You? With me on my studio program today is contributing editor Loretta Bacchiocchi. Loretta has a master's degree in nursing, and I just learned today, also has a master's in public health. She is an emergency room nurse and a professor at the Florida Hospital College of Health Sciences. Welcome, Loretta.
Thanks.
I know you're no stranger to the Hope on Fire listeners, and so it's always great to work with you.
And it's always good to be here.
Also on our program, a special guest today, Cheri Flynt. She has a master's degree in public health. Also, that's why they're dressed in the same color
exactly.
today. That's a requirement for anyone with a master's in public health. You must come in a dark mauve. I guess that's a mauve rust color or something.
No, it just shows we think alike.
It's amazing, really. Master's in public health, and she's also a registered licensed dietitian and manages the Center for Nutritional Excellence at Florida Hospital right here in Central Florida. Welcome, Cheri.
Thank you for having me.
It's just exciting to be able to have you on our program. We had a great time preparing for this program today. And listeners, today, my guest will not load you down with a bunch of medical terminology. This is information you will understand with tips that you can use immediately. If you've missed any of our previous programs on health and wellness topics, just visit our website at hopeonfire.org. And there you can subscribe to our video or audio podcasting service. So, folks, I want to just open our conversation today. There's so much information out there today, and we want to talk about a number of typical nutrition mistakes on this part one of this two-part series. But before we do that, why is it that pure dieting often doesn't work long-term?
Well, I think it's because a lot of times when we think of the word diet, it's causing you to just think of, during a small period of time, I'm going to change the way I eat, do some drastic things so that I can lose 10 pounds, in 2 weeks. We got to fit into a wedding dress, so a month before we go on these starvation diets. It's never about making a lifestyle commitment to change. And Cheri, you've got a real cute, a saying about diet, which I think is really great.
Well, I always tell people the first 3 words in diet is die. And that's how people feel when they go on a diet, because they go to such extremes to lose the weight. And as Loretta said, they're not looking at long-term, I'm going to commit to this for the rest of my life. Well, what most people do to lose weight, they couldn't keep that up long term. And so it's important to look at those small baby steps you can take that start turning your weight around, helping you lose, maintain, but being healthy at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, I think most people in the Western countries would be surprised to find that the weight problem is an international, worldwide epidemic right now, isn't it?
Yes.
The World Health Organization mentions that there are more now overweight people in the world than undernourished or malnourished people. Isn't that right?
Yes. When you start looking at the statistics, one that just kind of blew me away was in Africa. When you look at children, 0.7% of children in Africa suffer from malnutrition, but 3% are actually obese. And that's just very different from what we would expect to see.
So what we want to do today, listeners, is we want to talk about a list of a number of nutritional mistakes that we believe will be valuable no matter where you live in the world. But before we do that, Loretta, you had a statement from a book. We're going to mention some of the resources for this program to our listeners. You can find them on our website, hopeonfire.org. One of the resources is Creation Health Discovery, and there's a statement in this book that you read to me before the show today that I think is extremely helpful as we launch into this program?
Well, I'm suspicious that it's probably a saying for a cooking school or something, and it's definitely a French name, Le Rochefoucauld. I practiced this several times. I am hoping that I did it justice.
And what wisdom does this French person have to say?
It says, to eat is a necessity, but to eat intelligently is an art.
And that's what I hope we're able to communicate today. Some intelligence in the way we eat.
Right.
And we'll also mention some, in our second program, some information from a book called Mindless Eating, which we'll get to later on in this series. Let's start with the first topic that I know is going to resonate with a lot of people, the fat-free, taking fat-free at face value. That's the first mistake. Let's talk about that for a minute. What do we mean by fat-free, and why can't people use that as a diet or a nutritional safe place?
Well, I think number one, when people hear the term or see the term on a food label, fat-free, they equate that with calorie-free. And in the 80s, we told people if you eat fat-free or low-fat, you'll lose weight. Well, 26 years later, 27 years later, 64% of all Americans are overweight, so that totally backfired. And we've now come back to calories are very important. And fat-free does not mean calorie-free, but individuals, when they see that on the label, equate that with calorie-free. And sometimes the fat-free product, because the taste is lost somewhat when the fat is pulled out, they'll add more sugar, and it ends up having more calories than the full-fat product.
So the sugar actually increases the caloric
Right.
content.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And
What else has been a notable danger? One of the terms that I noticed that we see a lot of is the trans fats in this
Yes.
low-fat food. What does that mean?
Well, trans fat basically is a man-made fat. It was developed in the early 60s to help the food stay on the shelf longer. That's why Oreos, it takes them 6-7 months to mold. Well, probably not quite that long, but you know, they can stay on the shelf forever because they're full of trans fats. And it feels really good on our tongue, so we like that. But we know that that's probably more of a concern with heart disease than even saturated fat.
So if it slides down easy, that's
It
really
might be
kind of a
problem.
bad sign?
It could be, yes.
And I think another really interesting thing that is occurring is that since this whole launching of fat-free, we haven't seen an improvement in people's health. We are actually continuing to see a downslope
Exactly,
in
yeah.
people's health. And I ran across a new term the other day, diabesity. You know, now we even have a combination to show that, you know, we've got an obesity problem and diabetes that's very much related with the diabetes. And yet we've got so many fat-free labels out there, and that has been like the big push for the last, you know, 5 years.
Okay, so the first typical mistake then is taking fat-free at face value. Obviously, looking at labels is important.
It's important.
You want to
yes.
make sure trans fats typically are shown as partially hydrogenated. What is it? Hydrogenated oils.
Exactly.
Those will be on labels. Cereals, peanut butter.
Right, all kinds of
And
things.
now you're starting to see zero trans fat labels on products in the store, which is a good trend.
Yes.
Look for those,
Yes.
right?
Right. Now, the thing is, a product can say it's trans fat free and still have 0.5 grams of trans fat. The labeling law allows for that. So you also want to look at the ingredient list. If it states partially hydrogenated oil, then there's a tiny bit of trans fat still in that food product. And let's say you had 10 trans fat free products through the day, you might end up with 3 or 4 grams of trans fat. So you still want to look at the ingredient list along with the label.
So ideally,
Very
you
good.
want to avoid labels that have the hydrogenated oils,
Yes, right.
hydrogenated
Hydrogenated
oils,
oils, yes.
partially or
Partially is the trans fat. If it just said hydrogenated oil, that would be
That's
more like a
okay?
saturated. Well, you want to watch those,
You
but
also
yeah.
want to keep those
right,
down.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the second item. Skipping breakfast. I know this is one you shared with passion yesterday when we
Yes,
talked.
yes.
Talk about skipping breakfast being a strategy for weight management.
Well, as a nutritionist, I have people in my office all the time, or I'm out doing a talk, and obviously weight loss is going to come up, and they're like, well, I skip breakfast to lose weight, thinking they're saving calories. Well, research has now shown us that when you skip breakfast, that really plays a huge part in how well your metabolism is burning calories. In other words, you eat, let's say at 7 o'clock the evening before, then you don't have anything till noon the next day, your metabolism is dropping during that entire time. And so by eating breakfast, you rev up your internal engine, your body starts more efficiently burning calories, and therefore then you kind of give a boost to the ability to lose weight.
Okay.
And I think you probably even end up eating less calories during the day.
Yes, there's good research for that.
Yeah, I think there is,
Right.
because you have started off and you have a sense of fullness already,
Exactly.
especially if you make some good choices for
Right,
breakfast.
and that's important, the choices you make, right.
So actually starting off with a meal at the beginning of the day is a good strategy to crank up your metabolism.
Yes.
For those of you listening, the metabolism factor is really what helps regulate the burning of calories in your body.
Yes.
And if it's slow, when you're sleeping, for example, it slows down. When you're watching TV, I know we're going to talk about that later.
Yep.
Be careful about how watching television not only may actually cause you to gain weight, it sounds like.
Yes.
That's kind of scary too.
I mean, and people have to keep in mind that if, let's say you go to bed at 10, 11 o'clock, now you get up at 7, 8 o'clock, your body has not had any nutrition all that time, so you've been in kind of like a starvation mode, and so you definitely need to get something in it. And chances are, if you don't get the breakfast in, you're more likely to make poor choices when at 10, 11
So
o'clock
you're going to grab
you are
something
starving.
immediately off the
Sure.
shelf or the snack machine at work.
Yeah, the donut
or-
and the soda, because it's quick and easy and you're starving.
And maybe you have a bigger dinner when you get home,
Right,
or on the
yes.
way home, maybe fast food that you gorge yourself because you're so hungry.
You're so
Right.
hungry, yes.
And at that point, your metabolism is already slow. So that does that not mean then your body isn't able to break down those calories as efficiently?
It's more difficult to burn them. Yes.
So exercise plus breakfast equals
loss.
basically major
Yeah,
heating up your metabolism.
Right, exactly.
All right, we'll get back to that. All right, let's cover number 3 before the break. Low carb diets, and we'll probably go over the break, and we'll come back to this after the break. But low carb diets are healthier. That's the third typical nutrition mistake you're seeing a lot in your practice. Talk about that.
Well, I think that we've heard so much about the low carb, high protein diet being the only way to lose weight, and while you do lose weight that way, long term, there are health complications that may show up. Cholesterol level may go up. I've had individuals it throws their potassium levels off. They're in the ER thinking that they had a heart attack when it's just their potassium level has changed. And so
Kidney shut down.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds, and those are some extreme cases. More likely than not, you go home and kick the dog because you're not getting those carbohydrates you need to
Ouch,
be calm.
we don't want to
and
kick the
no,
dog.
Right.
That poor dog
yeah.
is so... Okay, sorry. I have a dog at home.
Yeah,
so
I know. But I've had people tell me they find they're very irritable
Yeah.
when they're on a low-carb diet. Now, what I do agree with, you have to be choosy about your carbs, and that's where that whole craze did have some merit. But you need to eat carbs.
Well, we hope you'll hold that thought. We'll come back right after this break on Hope on Fire, relevant talk radio for young adults. Welcome back to Hope on Fire, relevant talk radio for young adults. I'm here with Loretta Bacchiocchi and Cheri Flynt on our program today called Is Your Diet Killing You? So hopefully for those of you out there that are feeling the Holy Spirit kind of touch your shoulder right now, if you're resonating with that topic, I hope that you're joining us and staying with us as we continue on in this program today. The first part of a 2-part series, by the way, and we're talking in this program about typical nutrition mistakes that a lot of people are making these days. We've covered taking fat-free at face value, skipping breakfast, and we were talking before the break about low-carb diets being healthier than others. I wanted to reference a really neat little booklet by Dr. Arnott. He is the medical director at the Lifestyle Center of America, and this little booklet is very practical, very easy topics to understand. And in this booklet, where he talks about carbohydrates, he mentions that 227 food groups, plant-based foods, including nuts and seeds, the carbohydrate content in the average in all of these 227 plant-based foods is 65 to 70% carbohydrate content, and only 14% is protein. That kind of turns upside down what the modern fads of low-carb dieting are, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, because actually there's a lot of research supporting that if we eat more of a plant-based diet, that we are actually going to be eating a high carbohydrate diet.
Exactly.
But now instead of looking at including refined, we're looking to get rid of refined products in our lives and trying to actually get more fruits and vegetables and legumes, nuts, seeds, things like that are very healthy for us, but are high carbohydrate.
You know, it's interesting that that God seemed to know what He was doing since He was our Creator, and in the book of Genesis, and even before the fall and after the fall, we find in Genesis 3, even after the fall, that God was giving Adam direction to eat the fruit of the ground he was making. Right. That even after sin, when the toxins started coming into the environment, God knew that we were going to need everything that was natural, and every kind of food that's healthy for us comes from plants, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the low-carb diet actually turns it upside down and is kind of dangerous overall, isn't it?
Yes, and I think another myth is that there are carbohydrates out there that are kind of comfort foods that make us feel good, but we sit there and put them on a taboo list instead, like pasta. You know, what are your thoughts about pasta, Cheri?
I think there's a couple of things. One, while you can get healthier eating pasta, go with a whole grain, or one that has some whole grain, some refined, that even helps. But it goes back to portion size too, and that's really with this whole low carb, high protein craze. It was more the portions we were eating than the food itself, or what we were putting on top of it.
Okay.
And you know, medical research shows that you get the biggest bang for your buck when at least half of all your carbohydrates are a whole grain. So you don't even have to go 100% everything I eat is a whole grain. You can have a chocolate chip cookie with part whole wheat flour, part regular flour, and it's healthier for you than it was to start with. Right? Yeah, you can add nuts. I mean, there's all kinds of things.
So just be choosy about the kind of carbohydrates you're eating, and we'll get more into that in the second part of our series. Next item here is this whole concept of 3 square meals a day being the most healthy for your body, because your stomach will work too much if you're grazing, eating all throughout the day. Talk about that. It seems like there's a really growing trend of counsel out there that says, a modern counsel that says, eat throughout the day small amounts of food to keep your metabolism high. What about that?
And I think the tricky part is when you hear eating 4, 5, 6 meals a day. Keep in mind that's not like eating 3 square meals. You don't want those to be 6 square meals a day. And people are often tempted to, instead of seeing it more as snacking throughout the day, to see it as full meals, so you end up with way too many calories. Also, as you mentioned, metabolism, if you go too long without eating, your metabolism drops. So you want to eat often enough to keep things steady, right? So you don't have a blood sugar drop, and then you're just going to start stuffing your mouth. But again, you don't want to be eating things, you know, such a heavy meal 6 times a day that your stomach never stops working. That's not good either. You want to give it a chance to empty out.
Isn't the principle basically that the total amount of calories you need every day, as long as they're the right kind of calories, is what you need to be focused on? And what you're talking about is stringing those total daily calories out across the day to allow your body the best chance to break that down.
Right.
I kind of like the analogy of think of a fire. You know, when you create a fire, you don't log it up with every single piece of wood that you've got in the house. You start off with a couple of pieces, and as the fire dies down, you add another log or 2. Same type of principle in eating is I start off with if I'm going to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, of course, with whole grain bread and as natural as possible, peanut butter and all that.
No trans fats.
Exactly, of course. Yeah.
No hydrogenated oil.
Low sugar jelly. Yeah.
I might eat half a sandwich at 11 o'clock, and then I'll eat the other half at 1 o'clock. Just again continuing to just supply to my body the energy so that I never really bottom out, and I have continued energy. But I never have so much piled on my plate that it actually, I think, if you eat too much, you also get that lethargy afterwards, because your body has to work so hard to digest that.
Okay, let's jump into the next topic. That was a good segue. I want to talk about fruit juices versus eating the real fruit. You talked about the continuity of energy that you get when you eat you know, again, the grazing concept versus the 2 or 3 meals a day. What about people that think they're doing good for themselves by drinking a lot of juice because it's healthier than soda? And we're going to touch on soda real quick, but I want to talk about eating the real fruit versus fruit juice.
Well, with juice, what you have to keep in mind, you're getting only the natural sugar. And while there's vitamins and minerals in there, you're missing out on a lot of things that are beneficial that help you have a healthier diet, one being fiber. So a glass of orange juice, you know, even a small glass, is going to be absorbed very quickly, maybe 10, 15 minutes. However, you eat the whole orange, you have fiber that slows that whole process down.
The absorption of the calories into your system.
The digestive process takes longer. You feel full longer. You're much, I mean, who wouldn't rather eat an orange as to drink juice? That's much more satisfying. So especially when you're looking at weight loss, juice can be somewhat of an issue because, one, you can drink a lot of calories, but it just empties out of your stomach very quickly. So within, you know, 20 minutes, you're hungry
So what
again.
you're saying is when you eat the fruit, it gives you a sense of fullness.
Right, and it sticks with you longer.
It sticks with you longer.
The fiber,
and,
right.
And we call that glycemic index, don't we?
Right.
That's one of the terms that I've heard us kicking
Yes.
around, and you'll see that more, listeners, as you read information about the sugar spike that you get when you drink the juice. You think you're being healthy, and I'm just as guilty as others. I've got the grapefruit juice and the orange juice, all the citrus in my fridge, thinking I'm being healthy, and there's so many calories in there.
Right, right.
So let's talk about, so you're saying basically that issue is try to eat more of the whole fruit.
Right. I always
instead of
encourage
drinking the
people, right, eat your food, don't drink your food. You're going to enjoy that much more. It's going to be healthier all around.
Okay, next point. Some people think they're doing better by drinking diet soda versus the regular thing. Talk about that. I know we're stepping on some toes, including my own. I've got to get over that. But you're teaching me now, please.
Well, you know, I speaking specifically to regular soda, I have actually had people come up to me and tell me that they've lost 10, 15 pounds just by cutting out soda out of their lives. Because
even diet soda or regular?
No, regular.
All
just
right.
because of just the caloric content. I don't think anybody really stops to think about how many empty calories there are in that. Now, then, if you look at the debate between diet soda and, you know, regular soda, now you're looking at diet soda, which has all the sweeteners. And the sweeteners actually trick your body into believing you're drinking something sweet, but they actually also play havoc with your pancreas that releases insulin.
And you're talking about in the diet soda?
That's right, the diet soda.
And this artificial sweeteners mess up your system.
Your pancreatic, your pancreas release of insulin, it can actually, you know, play havoc with your body's ability to actually process the sugars that you do actually intake.
I see. Does that mean that it puts you at a risk for diabetes then?
Sure does.
Because you're not absorbing the other sugars the way you should?
Well, and there's also good research that has shown individuals drinking diet sodas actually may gain weight more so than people who choose to drink a regular soda because it changes your brain chemistry, and so you're not sensing fullness, and that sweet tooth stays alive. Where with a little bit of regular soda, while that's not the best choice either, at least your body senses that you've had something and the sweet tooth is satisfied, and you're not as likely to maybe then go on and eat other foods that would be higher in calories.
So somebody who's drinking a diet soda might be at a restaurant and they might actually eat a greater volume of food while they think they're doing their body good by drinking diet. They're actually tricking their system and eating more calories, more volume of food, and probably gaining more weight because of that?
Right.
Is
There's
that what you're
emerging
saying?
research that shows that diet sodas may contribute to weight gain.
Wow.
Definitely.
That is huge. Okay, the ultimate fluid for life, water. Some people want to stay away from it. We've got 2 minutes left. Some people trying to stay away from water, and then I want to touch on fresh is best as our last item. Touch on water briefly.
Well, it is definitely the beverage of choice. Most of our body is made of water. Our brain especially is extremely high in water content, and that's why at 3 o'clock in the afternoon we get that headache because we haven't been drinking enough water, and our brain needs to have that. And it keeps all the toxins, impurities filtered out. It just, you can't beat it. It keeps us cool.
So you can't get that from any other liquid.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Your joints are water, you know, you have water everywhere. And actually research shows that most of us actually tend to be slightly dehydrated most of the time.
And I've heard that when you feel dehydrated, it's too late.
You're already, when you're thirsty, your body's already dehydrated to a certain extent.
And second,
Speaking
by the
of
way,
that,
have a
have
drink.
some water.
I was just
I'm feeling a little thirsty.
But people often think, well, if I drink too much water, I'll be bloated. Well, water in equals water out. And you have to drink water for your body to get rid of water. It'll hang on to whatever it can. Plus, with digestion, things are going to flow through much more easily if you're drinking enough water.
I want to thank my guests today, Cheri Flynt, excellent conversation, and also Loretta Bacchiocchi. Don't miss part 2 of our series, Is Your Diet Killing You?, where we will unpack more about the optimal diet, 5 tips for successful nutrition changes, and a whole much more. If you have comments or questions about this program or prayer requests, please visit our website for contact information at hopeonfire.org. Thanks for listening today. God bless you.
Hope on Fire is produced by Livestreams Media, a listener-supported ministry. To download a free copy of today's program or be a part of our social network, please visit our website at hopeonfire.org. You may also contact us by writing to Livestreams Media, P.O. Box 608513, Orlando, Florida 32860. Once again, that's Livestreams Media, P.O. Box 608513, Orlando, Florida 32860, or online at hopeonfire.org. Thank you so much for your letters and continued support. Until next time, may God set your hope on fire.